Problems that can arise from self-driving. Introduction. Self-driving cars are gaining popularity. They're also raising a number of questions that we need to answer before fully embracing them. Here are some of the most important ones. Will it be able to identify human situations and decide how to respond? The most important thing to consider is that self-driving cars will be programmed to make decisions based on the data they collect. They will be able to identify human situations and decide how to respond, recognizing human gestures and facial expressions in addition to understanding speech. For example, if a pedestrian steps into the road while crossing at an intersection, the car should slow down enough so as not to hit them. It might also try out its horn if it detects an obstruction ahead, like another vehicle. Can it deal with unexpected situations that arise from human error? Self-driving cars are good at following rules, but they are not good at responding to unexpected situations. This is because they don't understand context and only react based on what they've been taught to do. Humans, on the other hand, may not be as good at following rules or driving safely, but they can think quickly in a variety of situations and respond appropriately. In many ways, this is why self-driving cars may replace human drivers. Their ability to react quickly and effectively can prevent accidents that would otherwise happen if humans were behind the wheel. However, there will still be situations where autonomous vehicles have trouble handling themselves properly. One example would be when a person pushes another person out of harm's way in order to protect them from being run over by an incoming vehicle. This action requires quick thinking about what needs doing next instead of just staying focused on one single task, such as staying inside your lane. Self-driving vehicles won't know how to respond if something like this happens because there aren't any rules telling them how exactly one should protect someone else from getting hurt by moving them out of harm's way. So what should we do? What happens if a self-driving car is involved in an accident? So, you've got a self-driving car on the road. It's probably going to be much safer than most human drivers. But what happens if that car gets into an accident? Who is responsible for the damage and injuries caused by the crash? The answer depends on where you live. As of today, there are no federal laws regulating how autonomous vehicles should be treated in terms of liability when they get into accidents, and don't forget, it's not just cars that can drive themselves. States are starting to pass their own legislation regarding this issue, but it may take years before we see any major changes across all 50 states. How can we be sure the technology is safe enough for use on public roads? Although self-driving cars are already on the road, there are still many unanswered questions about safety and regulation. This is especially true when it comes to how self-driving cars will handle unexpected situations that arise from human error. There's also the question of how often humans will readily accept the fact that their lives may be in the hands of machines for short periods of time, such as during highway travel. People may not feel comfortable with this notion after years of conditioning themselves against it. Do we have enough data about self-driving vehicles to make good decisions about them? We need more data. We need to know how they will work in real-world situations, including different weather conditions and other challenging road conditions. We need to understand how they interact with other cars and pedestrians on the road, so that we can make good decisions about them. Who will be held responsible if there's an accident or problem with a self-driving car? In the event of an accident or other issue with a self-driving car, who will be held responsible? The driver is always liable for any accidents that occur due to negligent driving. But what about cases where the car itself is at fault? The manufacturer may share some responsibility depending on how far along in development the autonomous vehicle was when it malfunctioned or caused trouble. If it was still being tested and not yet ready for commercial sale, then the manufacturer would likely bear more of the blame than if they had already been selling these cars for several years and had followed all government regulations while doing so. The insurance company will also be involved in such cases because there will need to be an investigation into whether someone else's negligence contributed to your accident as well as whether or not you were negligent yourself. If so, then your premiums might go up. This can get complicated because different states regulate insurance differently, so if you live in one state but suffer injuries while driving in another state, then things may get even messier. Self-driving cars are still relatively new and we need to learn more about what they can do before we trust them fully. For the sake of safety, we need to know more about how self-driving cars work before we put our trust in them. We need to know what they can do and the limitations of their capabilities. We also need to know how people will be held accountable when something does go wrong with a self-driving car. we also need to consider who is responsible for data that is used by self-driving cars. Someone needs to make sure that this data is being collected ethically and safely so that it doesn't cause harm or privacy issues down the line, like those seen with Facebook. Conclusion: self-driving cars are still relatively new and we need to learn more about what they can do before we trust them fully. It's important that we address the issues outlined above so we can ensure that this technology is safe for use on public roads.